The past few years, managing our staff pushed itself into the forefront of our worries with their unique needs and perspectives while climbing out of the pandemic. But meanwhile, the demands and expectations of being a parent today have been sneakily creeping back into our lives as something we should be prioritizing again. Who better to discuss the ins and outs of this subject than two of the smartest and most thoughtful camp director moms who know what it's like on both sides of this conversation? It's the East Coast, the West Coast, and the Midwest grandma in the middle. I am excited to see where this conversation takes us, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Day Camp Pod.
This is the Day Camp Pod from Go Camp Pro, bringing you the best ideas, strategies, and discussions in the day camp industry. You can find our show notes at daycamppodcast.com.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will ensure that your camp thrives. Explore their website today at CRS4Rec. CRS is serious about fun. Scheduling shouldn't be so difficult and take as much time as it does. Come check out Camptivities to learn all about their scheduling tools, and they're specifically designed for camps by camp people. Save time, get rid of the mistakes, and get back to enjoying your summer. Find out more at camptivities.com. Let me tell you about CampMinder, the #1 camp database in the world. It has the most robust offerings of service features found anywhere. Every feature works together to create a full, seamless system that helps your camp office run more efficiently while giving your camp family state-of-the-art communication and financial tools. Check out the details at campminder.com.
Welcome back to Day Camp Podcast. I'm Andy Pritikin, Director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson in the Chicago suburbs in the Midwest.
And we are joined today by Jaime Pickles from Everwood Day Camp in Sharon, Massachusetts.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Nice to be here.
Welcome back, Jaime. Jaime was on a podcast, I think it might have been the first or second season, where we talked about the sleepaway camp spirit, because she had been a sleepaway camp person for many years before jumping into this day camp boat.
It's 15 years later, Andy. 15.
Yeah, and now you're a day camp expert. Welcome to the club. And we bring back again for the third time, I think, Kelly Jones from Outpost Day Camps in San Diego. Gosh, it's so nice out there, Kelly.
I know we're all cold, but I think the high today is actually 80, but it gets down to 40 at night. So we're just,
oh my gosh.
We're a big,
I think I'm 11 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're at like
it is.
29 here today.
It's freezing here on the, So anyway, this conversation started because Jaime is putting together a tri-state presentation, and tell us the inspiration for this, Jaime.
Yeah. Well, so I am a parent. I am a camp parent and a camp director, right? So I'm sort of living all of this every day, living the experience of being a mom in trying to manage youth-specific organizations all over the place for my kids, not just our own. And my kids go to different programs, go to a different summer camp in the summer. So I've got a lot of different perspective on this. And I was thinking after this summer, I was like, hey, I actually found that our parents seem to actually be calmer right now. And I'm like, what am I doing? I keep hearing that people are struggling. I'm like, what is it that's going well for us right now? And are there certain things that we're doing that actually make our parents feel better about us? And then I started talking to people, and then somebody said, hey, Jaime, did you know that the
Surgeon General.
Thank you. I was going to say Attorney General. The Surgeon General just put out a disclaimer, an advisory around parenting, that parenting has now been an actual, defined as bad for your mental health, right? And that, that's actually something that the Surgeon General has put forward. And I was like, just putting all the things together and thinking, all right, our parents are really trusting of us. The Surgeon General put these things out. What is the responsibility for camp professionals to be connected with parents and make sure we're doing the right things by our communities and our parents when they're part of this? There's so many different pieces of this, but that's sort of what got my brain going.
Yeah. So she emailed me something like that, and I forwarded it on to Kelly Jones, who I just spent a few days with out at the Wake Conference, who speaks about this kind of thing a lot. And she sent back an email saying, yeah, she's got a bunch of kids, Kelly. And she's like, I just got a thing about a fire at one kid's school, and then a threat made against another kid. And it's like, wow, it just put me, my kids are in my 20s now. And I'm just like, holy crap. It's just, I forgot how stressful it is to be a parent, especially in 2024 with all the crap going on in schools, right? And we're not going to talk about shootings, but it's always in the back of our mind, that crap too. And it's just an unbelievable layer of stress, right? We talk about why is it more stressful to be a kid today, right? Well, because of the layers of the technology and social media and all this kind of stuff that wasn't there before. And it's the same for a parent, if not more, right? I love when I heard that one learning about cell phones and kids and all that kind of thing, that one expert said to me a long time ago, which I always think about, cell phones are actually worse for parents than they are for kids. It's
Yes.
because I used to
Oh my
leave my
gosh.
house and be like, bye, mom. And she'd let me be home for dinner. Now, text me when you get there. Text me when you do this. How come you didn't? And let me follow. Oh, there he is.
Let me follow you everywhere.
Follow you. Right. And around. So, yeah. So that said, I do, just going back to the first thing Jamie said about parents today, I agree in that I do believe that parents are cooler and more down to earth and have better expectations in a way than parents 10 or 20 years ago, where with the helicopter parenting and I think there's less of that. I think parents now, like the typical day camp parent that's in their like mid 30s or early 40s, I think is a lot more understanding. I mean, this is from the old guy who's been doing it, who's seen, who went through the everybody gets a trophy stage and all that kind of stuff with my people. And the first thing that Jamie, you wrote in your slideshow you shared with us, you wrote, parents are not crazy.
You're right.
Start with that. And this is something that I explain to my staff every year, including my office staff who are parents.
Right.
Because they jump to conclusions about that, right? But anyway, I'm going to hand it back off to you guys. Kelly, why don't you chime in on this?
Okay, that's interesting about better expectations.
I mean, that's just my
Yeah,
personal
I would
feeling.
not agree that they have more realistic expectations, but what I do think is that there's like a bigger, with everything in life these days, or at least in our country, there's a bigger or greater dichotomy. So I think there's more parents who maybe want camp for, I don't want to necessarily call them the right reasons, but maybe for the same reasons that I want camp for my kids. They want them to grow and they want them to be outside and live real life with real people, and you see the value in the struggle. They're kind of in it for like the deep reasons. And then there's the parents who I think like aren't thinking deeply about it and want their kids to have fun. Nothing wrong with that. But I think that where the expectations have been wildly unrealistic, in especially the past year or two, maybe even more than before, is the expectation that nothing should ever happen that their child doesn't like. Nothing. Like, I just get so many
Yeah.
phone calls about that. And I mean, luckily not so many compared to having 1,000 kids, but I get way more than I would relative to the seriousness of a situation. For example, the real situation, because 2 counselors saw it and 2 other kids were involved, was a kid got basically like smushed on a camp seat. Like, it's like he was between 2 best friends and they were kind of like excitedly talking, and he got smushed, and I think he kind of felt just pushed. And the child talked to the kids, told them to stop, talked to the counselor. Counselor said, "Oh, we won't put you with them again. Thank you so much for telling me. Are you hurt? No. All right. Yep, I'm fine." There were like all these appropriately minor things that took place. And okay, great. Counselor didn't tell me about it, of course, because there's nothing to tell. I get a phone call from dad, bullying, gonna report you to the authority. And on the one hand, of course, I was like, but on the other hand, like you can just tell the dad, like, it was painful to him that his kid is quote unquote being hurt. Of course, his kid was not hurt. His kid was fine. And actually his kid was awesome. He told somebody, he was brave. And by the way, for context, the kid's like 6, I think. He's very little. But the dad was just so alarmed and so upset and so worried and so mad. And I think it's tricky because the end of the story is that we got to a great place and dad came to our family picnic and, "Oh, you all are so intentional. And I can actually see that you're good people and you care so much. And I actually met the counselor and what a lovely guy." And he never said that he was wrong or anything like that, which whatever, I don't need that. But I feel for him. I feel for myself as well, but I feel for the intensity that it took. Whereas another parent might have been like, "Wow, were you okay?" "Yes." "What did you do?" "Told the counselor." "How smart. Great work. You excited to go back tomorrow?" "Yep." "Awesome." But what an emotional journey for that dad.
Kelly, I think also with the differences between the parents now, they don't want their child to be around someone that's different than them. I ran into a father, the daughter. Okay, so the one child dyes his hair and his gender identity is different than normal. The little girl didn't like him. The father jumped out of his car at arrivals and went over and yelled at the kid. And we got in the middle, got him away from the child or whatever.
Wow.
But then the next day is the last day of camp, and that child's father gets out of the car, goes after this father, and so the two fathers are going to fight right there at camp at arrivals, and all just because he didn't like someone being different than him. And I'm a public program. I'm in the parks. I get anybody and everybody, and that's wonderful. But I'm finding more parents not accepting anything that's not in their wheelhouse.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will help ensure that your camp thrives this summer. Check out their inflatable aquapark courses for pools or lakes, the Prime cards, the cool little go-kart things, the emergency alert and lightning detection system. Whoa, the splash pads. Whoa, if you got the money for that, splash pads is the way to go with the heat we got. The Zoom Flume, a lot less money, and cool, talk about the most awesome water slip and slides that you could possibly get. The jumpers, okay, for bouncing all around the place. Mini golf, the prefab cabins and pavilions and bathrooms, the shade structures. Lord, do we need shade structures these days? The shade structures cannot be beat. And of course, the playgrounds, including the ones with the cool musical components. Anyway, CRS Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source. Explore their website today at crs4rec.com because CRS is serious about fun.
Sam, what are your thoughts about what Kelly said compared to what I said in regard to parents' expectations? I don't think it matters what they're paying for camp. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. What do you think it's like at the municipal level?
I think you're both right. I mean, I think we still got the extremes on either end, but I think nowadays they are not. Maybe we're communicating better. Maybe that's part of it, is that after all these years, we're communicating in different ways. Used to be only everything in writing, and so they felt prepared. Then it went to everything online, and then some were on board, some were not on board. So now we do both again. But I think they are, and then I also assumed, Andy, that maybe it was just my age, that now they listen to me, they'll ask, they'll communicate if they don't feel like they're getting the whole picture. And so then we're able to keep them more in the loop, and then they feel more comfortable and they're much more agreeable for everything down the road. And I know you were talking earlier that the way people approach the parents, sometimes us as workers get tired and get crabby and whatever. And I go back to that old thing about smile before you answer the phone. Because every time you talk to a parent, if you start off with that attitude, like, I'm so glad to see you, even if you're not, then it's going to come across as okay. They're not going to feel that maybe you're under pressure.
Yeah, along those same lines, one thing that, and of course, we don't do this perfectly, but a few years ago, I think we just realized that we were experiencing that stress about parents. I do think we're in a good place with it now, but we found that we were just saying not horrible things behind their back or anything like that, but even labeling, oh, that's super hard, mom, or oh, she's so annoying, or like, hopefully we didn't use the word crazy, but I'm sure that was said at some point. And we finally kind of made a pact together as a director team. We are going to use, I called it accurate language. I don't know if someone is crazy. Well, I guess I do if they're my therapy client, but I don't, these parents are not, nor would I use the word crazy, but we're going to say that they're anxious, or we're going to say she has a lot of questions, or we're going to say her kids have a lot of medical things and she needs to know more than the average parent. We're just going to be more accurate, because then when we answer the phone, we're like, she's going to have more questions, or she has a lower threshold for wanting to understand things, rather than annoying.
That's a good one.
It's annoying. Like, I'm just going to be annoyed.
I love
But
that,
it
Kelly. I
worked-
love, I
it's
think
worked
that's
pretty
great.
well. And then we extended it later to our staff because same thing. If I'm supervising Andy and I'm like, oh gosh, like Andy's the worst, right? And then I'm like, hey, Andy, like that's, first of all, that's just really mean. And second of all, I'm just going to be a worse supervisor. Maybe I'm like, oh, Andy's never worked with a human child before. Of course he needs a little extra help.
But not just that, everybody's watching. The people that heard you badmouth me, right, are now like, look,
Yeah.
oh, look, she's so full of crap now. Look how she's doing that. You don't want people saying that either.
Yeah, like an integrity
Yeah.
check. Like, so not that we're not perfect people who never complain, but at least adjusting that threshold and be
And if
mindful
we're
about things.
truly leading with empathy, we need to have empathy for all of our stakeholders and all of the people who are involved. And our parents are the ones who are making the decision to send them to us, right? So we have to have that perspective on them. Like, we have to be empathetic towards whatever's going on with them and trying to help support them through that. I wanted to clarify a little bit. I don't know that when I felt was suggesting that our parents are calmer, I don't think it's because I think I agree with you, Kelly. The 0 to 60 is there more than ever, I think. Like, seeing if there's a problem, having a huge reaction to that, even if it's a tiny problem. I talk about that with our kids and our families too. Like, let's not make a big problem out of a small issue that we can resolve. But I think it's what I see as better is, I think, when you are proactively loading that information to parents, saying that your kid's gonna experience some discomfort here. That's okay. This is how we're gonna communicate with you about things. This is what you can expect from our team in terms of the communication to you. I actually have a little flyer that we send out to our families before camp, so they have everybody's contact information. My cell phone's in my signature. There's certain things that even just by perception to say, hey, we're here to help you. Like, we are your partner in this. I think it helps them feel a little bit like, okay, like these are good people that I can trust. I think the stuff that makes me anxious as a parent is like a situation where you don't have anybody to talk to. You don't know what's going on. I was criticized recently and I'm curious what you all think about this, but I actually send our camp schedule to all of our camp families at the beginning of each week so kids can sit down with their parents and parents can sit down and see what they have in store for the week. Apparently, that's not something that a lot of people do. I don't know how you guys do that, but I felt like to me, that's a conversation where kids can have that with their parents and the parents know what's going on. So it helps parents feel a little less out of the loop. Is that something that you guys do?
Even our staff need that more now. They like to know what's coming up. They
What's
like
coming?
to know
Yeah.
what's the next
Well, maybe
step.
everybody's on the
going on?
spectrum now and needs a visual
Yeah.
schedule. Maybe that's what it is too.
Exactly.
But remember, the word of 2023, like from Time Magazine or whatever, was transparency, right? Authenticity.
Right.
Like, that's
Yeah.
the thing now. So I think
Yeah.
that parents do appreciate that. I think that old school camp people would be like, oh my gosh, she's opening Pandora's box. Now I'm going to get way more emails and phone calls asking questions, kind of thing.
Right.
So no,
Right.
I think it's brave
It's
of
the
you to
opposite.
do that. I think it's brave
I feel
to
like
do
it's
that.
yeah. And I
And
feel like
just-
it's been the opposite. And there's always like a little caveat, like subject to change, schedule can be whatever. But I think to me, I think it brings the opposite.
And just like
Yeah.
the kids that we end up having a challenge with, you end up getting really close to them by the end of the summer because you have worked so close. That
Right.
happens with the parents too. If you have a
Mhm.
parent who they need this information and want to know it ahead of time, by the end, there's the trust between you because you've worked
Yeah.
together so hard.
Well, I think
Mm.
that the people on the phone here, on this call, we've all been doing this for a while. And our level of confidence in what we do is also relatively high.
True.
I think that it gives us permission mentally for ourselves to do that. And Kelly was talking about that, like super authentic and intentional language. And you
Mhm.
mentioned that too, Jamie. And it just made me think about how much more often I do that now. And it all started, I give Dr. G credit because we had her coming in and doing staff trainings the summer of 2021. And I was saying something like, if you get COVID, she was like, when your
Yeah.
kids gets COVID. And so now I always am like, when your child is having difficulties, like, I just cut through the BS and I just
When
make them
something
start
happens they
thinking
don't
about it.
like.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. When your kid is disappointed, when I get them thinking like that, so that
Mhm.
I'm not trying to make everything unicorns and rainbows, because it's not. Camp is a
Right.
very multifaceted experience.
Yeah.
One
And
thing that you said, Jamie, that I think is so important is you talked about the perception. And I think, I mean, as a psychologist, like the emotions that I think are the scariest, I won't get into super dark things, but I think in the context of this is one of the same ones, which is, well, I guess the same too. I always talk about desperation and impulsivity, especially those together,
Mhm.
not great, right? That's what's going to lead to that Facebook post of that parent saying, oh, post summer camps is the worst. But I think the perception, if they have the perception that they give information, I can find out I already know what's happening, or I can find it out easily. I know who to contact. I picture like people's shoulders by their ears and they go, ah, like
Exactly.
it takes away the desperation. And when they don't have the desperation, I actually think we end up hearing from them less because they don't feel desperate to ask. They're like, I trust them and they'll tell me the important they kind of understand what we're going to share. And I think another thing that's happened that's similar is that the threshold of how much information they need is just higher. They need more because, like I was sitting here thinking the other day about communication. We had a meeting earlier this week. We're talking about how we don't want to start texting our parents. Against that, pros and cons for sure. But right now, our camp is not going to be sending text blasts or anything like that. We have an app with notifications and we have emails and phone calls, whatever. That's a whole other topic. But what we were talking about was how parents and humans these days are trained to sit there and be passive. Like when I go to the dentist long ago, I would get an appointment and I would have to remember that appointment. And then I would go to the appointment. That's it.
Mhm.
I have to have a calendar and I have to figure it out.
You got that
Now,
little card.
how's
You got
that?
a little card. You put it on your
Yeah,
fridge
somewhere.
for 6 months.
But it was like on you and it was an active process. And now I can just sit there and do nothing and they will text me. Now it's getting even more. Now they're texting me 2 weeks before, a week before, 2 days before, a day before.
Mhm.
They call me if I don't see
I
it.
like the
They-
morning of.
like,
The morning of is great. That's a
but
great one.
I find myself trying to remember that because when parents, like last year, one of the parents was like, well, I signed up for this aftercare thing, but I forgot. So I didn't send them. And I was like, okay. They're like, so you should refund it. And I'm like, but like you took a spot. And when I tried to have good customer service, I'm like, you can come to the morning one too for free. And the session just started a few days ago. Anyways, but I could just tell they were annoyed that we didn't remind them. And so I've just been thinking a lot about we're in this situation regardless. I also don't want or need to handhold everybody, but the threshold is just higher. Like people are more passive. And then I think when they feel like it already feels like an injustice when they have to get information or when something has been forgotten, it's easy to feel like something bad has happened to you, to blame the other person, and then to easily go on a Facebook group and then get confirmation that the business or the organization is horrible and you're totally regular and a horrible thing has happened to you and you're a victim. It's
Right.
there's a
Well,
lot.
I think it's
Oh,
not just about
it's interesting.
the passivity. I think that's so true, but it's also about the simplicity of the messages that are being sent. Like you can get reminders, but those reminders are just like a quick text, right? Like they're not like if you're a camp that happens to send or a program that sends 3-page long emails and then you complain about parents not reading them. I think that there's something to be said for that. No, I think parents read emails all day long. I think that happens. But there's a certain point where you lose your people's attention and there might be fine details that they don't see at the bottom and that you can't like it. So it's really thinking about the quality of that communication and how do you break important pieces and information up for parents so they can digest it in the same way that our Gen Zers are digesting information and our kids are digesting information and our parents need it presented to them the same way. Because if it's
For
too complicated or too much, it is going to get missed.
for us now we do bullet points. And then if
I
you want to
love
read
bullet
more
points. Yeah.
farther down, we'll have some verbiage. But if you want to know just exactly, they seem to understand more. But I did have people this summer who they'd sign up for 1, 3, and 4 and forget. They'd call me all the time. Which weeks did
Yeah.
I sign up for
Oh,
again?
yeah.
It's like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Well, look, I think that's something we need to do more and more of, right? I mean, Jamie works with my son, Justin, and he's all into the automated things and the AI things. And you guys use Camper Machine too, which can
Yeah,
do a lot
which
of
is
cool stuff like that.
yeah, it's
Camp
been
Minder, all the regular software can't necessarily do that. But I
Mhm.
think, yeah, like Kelly was saying about the dentist example, it's such a great example of how things are laid out for people and the expectations, right? But then, Jamie, you did write in your thing that the bar is low. It is low because they're coming from school. because
They're
school
coming,
doesn't do
it's not
any of
just
that.
school. It's any of these outside programs. It's sports teams. It's everything. Like it's
Right.
like it is a mess out there, people, for parents, and it's really hard to sort through. I have like 4 different apps on my phone for my kids' sports teams, right?
my
And their
God.
schedules. Yeah, and they're all excited that they're using apps, but I have to check 4 different
Yeah.
like to try and keep up with where everybody has to
Holy
be. And then
crow.
if they let you know last minute, which is 100% the norm, like, oh, by the way, practice was changed from 5:30 to 7:30 tonight. It's like, oh, okay. Those are the things where it's like, and then your kids get stressed out and they're passing that stress back on to you too, because now my son is the number one. Hey, mom, are you sure our practice is tonight? Are you sure? Mom, do you know? Because he's experiencing it that way too. So that's like sort of the underlying background noise that's happening for parents all the time. So if we can get in front of that and communicate in a way that's really useful for parents, like that's so awesome. And that whether it's text or email, I think still email is relevant. I don't think it has to
Yeah.
be text.
No, email is relevant when the kids are at camp. Then they're looking at
Yeah.
their emails.
Yeah.
Right. I think then the motivation is higher to check it. But I'm relating to you so deeply, Jamie, because for the first time in our lives, we have we have 5 kids, but the older
Oh, wow.
ones
Yeah.
are out of the house, like 2 in college, 1 who just graduated. And then so at our house, we have a 4th grader and a 7th grader, and they're both on club sports for the first time. And yeah, there's one, but they communicate through the app, but through email, but it's in the app, but it's not all the stuff for the app is correct, but the games are,
Correct.
but not
Yes.
the practices. But then the other app, but then they change it all the time, but then it feeds to my calendar, but then sometimes they accidentally put 6 a.m. instead of 6 p.m. So I have to it's crazy. And it's funny because
My gosh.
like parents are experiencing more anxiety these days. That relates to the Surgeon General. That just is true. But I don't think it's just anxiety. And this is always, so like as a psychologist, I specialize in ADHD among other things, but that's probably the thing I specialize in the most. And I think sometimes we confuse anxiety with like cognitive overwhelm. And I think that's part of what parents have. And I think that's why they miss things. I think that's why their threshold for annoyance is understandably lower. I think that's why when something annoying happens at camp, it's double, triple annoying because this was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be fun. And our brains are just so full, even just your app example. And that's like a fun extracurricular thing. That's not even their school or the dance or the day off or the minimum day that they have 4 days randomly in November. Like there's just so much. And that's just.
Yeah. Well, how about all the stupid grades, right? All the test scores and the grades, they're all up online now. Like as soon as the kid takes the test.
Well, and there's so much. I mean, I'm sure men experience it too, but just speaking as a mom, there's so much shoulding on yourself. Like there's this one woman, I forget her name or else I'd give her the credit, but she's on TikTok and I just love her because she basically is like, it's okay. You just need to check every grade that your kid has, but don't nag them about it, but make sure that you hold them accountable. But like, don't talk to them about it too much, but don't talk to them not enough. And make sure you communicate with their teachers, but let them communicate for themselves. Like she goes on. And by the time she's done, like, it's obvious that it's satirical and she's showing how ridiculous it is, but it is like, I didn't even sign up for these. And half of my middle school sons' teachers I get a notification every time there's an assignment that's created or graded and I'm like, I don't actually want to know this.
No.
I see it. Something inside of me goes, should I care? Should I check?
Right.
Am
Do I need to look? Is I going like I gotta look? I gotta look.
You feel a little guilty.
Am I a good person? Am I a horrible? Like, I mean, it's just like
No.
so.
I have adult kids who are parents right now. And the funny thing is, Thanksgiving last week, my daughter-in-law and my daughter and myself, we each came with like 5 craft projects and decorating cupcakes and all these scheduled things for the kids all day long. And when we weren't doing that, they were great doing hide and seek on their own and whatever. But as parents now, they feel like it's got to be scheduled. They even took them to a plaything before they came to my house. All the cousins went to a Millie's Playhouse thing and then came. They feel like they have to have the kids just,
Well, don't get Dr. Kelly started on this because this is her entire camp. This is her whole camp is like play outside.
It's hard though. It's interesting that you mentioned that because it totally evoked this memory of last Halloween. And this Halloween, I was in such a weird funk. I was like, I don't even want to decorate. I don't know why. Maybe you just uncovered it because last year, I think it was that my mom happened to be in town and I was like running around like a weirdo on Halloween. And I don't even know where it was coming from because I'm not usually, well, I do run around like a weirdo a lot, but not usually relative to holidays and crafts. But I was like, we're building a haunted house. We're making pumpkin bread. We're carving this. We're taking pictures. And this was all in like a 3-hour span. And my mom comes up like petting my arm, like, are you okay?
Everything's okay.
Like,
Yeah.
is this fun? Like, do you want to do this? And part of it was I had purchased all these things and it was like a deadline. Like, it's Halloween. Ah! And I don't know. I remember going to bed that night being like, what did I just do? Like, but yeah, you feel there's something that you feel like you should. It's like we just know. We know too much. We have too many opportunities, like one of you said earlier, to know where your kid is, to have an idea of something you should check or know or follow up on. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I feel like it's sort of like that. I'm not going to blame social media for this, but I like to blame social media for a lot of things. So I'm gonna a little bit because as parents, we're all on there and our camp parents, the millennial, like they're all on there. And so everybody's norm of what is supposed to be a good parent or a reflective of good parenting is staring at us back in the face as much as we are adults now and should know better that it's not realistic to have perfectly carved pumpkins and your kid in a homemade costume. There's still this like sort of idea that's planted in your brain, and all of these sort of social media psychologists who they're not always fun and satirical, sort of putting these ideas in your brain. So if you are a parent on social media, it's just as damaging, I think, as it can be for kids, except I think it has that same impact. So there's a lot of pressure.
And then the pictures. Everybody wants
Oh,
their
and then the
life to look
pictures.
perfect.
And then the
And
pictures, right.
yeah. So,
100%. And everything has to look in the just right way. And
do you remember my Christmas card last year?
Mhm.
It was all 4 of my grandkids on our laps, all crying.
I
And I thought,
love that.
I'm sending it out. It's reality. Most people would never put the kids not happy, but it was just a moment that was hilarious. One had a dirty diaper, one just bumped heads, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
All right, we're going to take a
Oh, sorry. Let me say one quick thing and then I'll
sure.
go ahead. I think it relates a little bit to the lack of distress tolerance that we all have because we all think that everything should look fun. The kids should look happy at Disneyland. Usually they're actually tired and they're bored of waiting in lines and they're annoyed because they don't agree on the ride and they ate too much sugar. It's not actually as fun as it sounds. Nothing against Disneyland, but we've had some rough days at Disneyland. But it makes you feel like everything should always be good. And it's not. And sometimes
That's so funny. Yeah. Disneyland makes me miserable too. But Disney World, where we live. But we're going to take a quick break here for our sponsors, and we're going to pick it up and talk about what we can do at our camps to try to allay these anxieties and fears and such. All right.
Scheduling affects every camper and every staff member's summer. It's easy to make mistakes. It takes a ton of time. Bottom line, scheduling is hard, and it doesn't have to be. Let Camptivities help you create a balanced, engaging schedule without the mistakes and without those long days and late nights. Camptivities does it all for day camps. Auto scheduling, camper and group scheduling, elective scheduling, manual adjustments, over 60 different reports, tons of customizable settings, and so much more. So don't wait until the new year. Now is the time to find a better way to schedule and save 15% on your first year. That's right, baby. The folks at Camptivities would love to show you the next big thing in camp. So get away from your desk and get back outside and play with the kids at camp. Go to camptivities.com. As a camp director, you're a leader of your camp and a pillar in your community. When your customers put tremendous trust in you, Campminder's powerful management software tools deliver the day-to-day task support that helps you make every touchpoint moment memorable and every summer stellar. Campminder has the most user-friendly platform for both your staff and your parents and is backed by a team of crafty engineers and customer service associates who are constantly thinking of ways to optimize your camp's database, communication, and financial management. With state-of-the-art app for your camp families and an API available for third-party softwares, Campminder is always evolving elite summer camp software. Check them out today at campminder.com.
And we're back. For anybody here who hasn't been in the parenting game in a few years, wow, it's a lot. And I sort of saw it as my kids were getting out of it, and it's only gotten more intense. Yeah, I mean, I do talk to a lot of parents that are nowadays who are like, you know what? I do not even set the notifications thing. If the school needs me, they're going to call me. I don't want to know when they're getting a test and when they're getting an assignment. Like, I don't get that out of my bandwidth, please. So I think, like all things, it's a pendulum. And I think it's going a little all the way to one side. So we try at camp for it to be a reprieve in a way, right? We shouldn't overwhelm them. But like you guys were saying, one example that made me think of it is we do a lot of dress-up days at our camp. And we think it's a lot of fun, but it stresses the hell out of parents. And they want to know ahead of time. The last thing they want to know is at 7:00 at night that tomorrow is Moana Day and what are we doing? So yeah, I think that constant communication is important. And then you talk about, you mentioned, Kelly, you don't want to text people. You guys have an app and you want to do the push notifications and like, my God, that's how I feel. Some people are going to read emails. Some people are going to read push notifications. Some people are going to read text. I mean, you talk about push notifications. We are using Campminder, have the companion thing now, but it's like, now I have to have somebody that's writing emails, writing texts, and doing push notifications. And by the way, if you're a parent, you're probably only reading one of those. So now I have to sort of guess, or I have to send them all out. Should I get a radio station too and broadcast it on a radio station? Like, it's crazy.
An earpiece, and you can just pop into their ear. Your child is fine. You can trust us.
Right. And now it's funny because we're approaching Christmas here, and Brandy in my office is like, oh, we should really send a holiday card because people are so tired of all that other BS that actually having a holiday card would be a really cute thing. Like, probably right. So yeah. So what are you guys thinking about as ways to be able to help the people listening on here? How do we allay these anxieties from our camp families?
I mean, I think we've talked about the word proactive a lot, and I think it's different than I used to think it is. Like, and there's two totally different things we could talk about. So we could try to hit both or focus on one, but there's the general communication of your camp. And then there's the, what if a problem comes up? So did you want to focus more on the general and kind of let the problem thing be on the side if we have time for it? Or do you have a preference?
I think we try to do them both. I mean, the communication one we already started talking about.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one really, if you do it well, it mitigates the problem ones because, like I was saying earlier,
right. As I tell my middle management people, you don't want to be like, hey, hi, Mrs. Wiedemeyer. This is Dr. Kelly Jones. I'd like to introduce myself to you. And by the way, your kid got punched in the face today. Like, you don't want your first interaction being this negative one.
Well, and like one thing that did happen this summer that was positive that I was just like, interesting, is I don't know what percentage, but more than half, maybe even 2/3 of the emails or calls that we would get that's like, hey, this thing happened. And those will always happen. Part of me is like, I can prevent those from, no one will ever have any negative feelings. I cannot. I want to, but I cannot. But I got so many that were like, hey, we love you all and you're doing a great job and we trust you and he's having a great time. And this thing happened. And I just so appreciated that. I mean, parents don't owe me that, but I just felt like
I love those
they're
emails.
basically saying like, we already have good thoughts and feelings, but we also need help. And I was like, man, I wonder how we earned that. Again, not support from everybody. And some parents have known us longer than others, of course, but I do think it's on us to communicate intentionally several things before we even meet their human child. They need to know who we are, and we don't have to be more than we are. But we have to show this is what we're going for. This is who our program is for. This is what it is. This is what we believe about children, believe about humans. And so we've been trying to message more of that. I think we did a little bit of an audit of our communication. And by that, I mean, like literally what emails we send when, and we categorize them like logistics. We need money from you. Here's a date to know, or emotional, relationship building, community building, that kind of stuff. This was probably in 2019. And I was surprised, but it was helpful to know that, I mean, 95% of the stuff was just so logistical. And so since then we were trying to balance out Here's something fun to know. Here's something about parenting. Here's why we love your kids so much. Here's what we think is so awesome about kids. Just having them just know who we are and what we're going for, then that even helps them just sign up for us or not. Because if they don't like what we're going for, that's okay. There's a bunch of other camps. So hopefully attracting the right people, not like we always talk in the office that I think to me, it's like an integrity thing of, I'm really not trying to talk you into coming to camp. I mean, we've had the luxury of being full or full enough for quite a while, but like, please don't come if it's not a good fit. I just want to give you all the information that I possibly can, let you ask questions, and then help you decide. And so I think that's number one, is trying to get the right people and have them make the right decision.
Right. Well, that goes back to that authenticity thing and not trying to be unicorns and rainbows for everybody, right? You're not selling used cars. I had a camp family come for a tour, and within 10 minutes, we started talking about that we're no technology, no cell phones, or nothing like that. And they just like, we're like, okay. Mom was like, okay, good, thanks for letting us know. Bye. And they just got in the car and left. I was
Yeah.
like,
And how good that they knew that before instead of the first day of camp, but then they're upset about it. It's nice that they get the opportunity to opt out, and that's okay. So I think there's just the who you are. And then I do honestly think that policies are so symbolic. Like, and I think actually having kind of intense, rigid policies is good, because it's like, we have decided this is what the system is, and then you have to stick to it. Of course, a parent wants a refund even when it's past the deadline, but no, because I mean it. And if I mean that, then I also mean that if a child doesn't do the right thing, can't be at camp. Like we mean what we say, we do what we say, and we let you know 27 times beforehand, so it's not a surprise. But I do think that policies are important.
Kelly, recently, well, I think it was a post-COVID thing that we made sure that we did, that I feel like parents responded really well to, that helped a lot with this specific thing, was a camper code of conduct. So rather than like have it be buried in parent handbook or just all around policy, it was just as another form that we want parents to sign off on on behalf of their kids, just a camper code of conduct. It has bullet points. It's pretty straightforward. And that seemed to help a lot with some of these feelings or concerns on the outside that we weren't handling things equitably, even if we were. I think it was like, because it wasn't published and wasn't out there to everybody, people just assumed or didn't trust that we were handling every situation the same way, even if we couldn't tell them all about all the situations, right?
And we go from preschool through middle school.
Right.
We adjust it for each division.
Perfect. Yeah.
We try to have both the parent and the child sign the code of conduct so that we know that they both saw it. Although they fudge a lot, and parents will sign it without going over it with the child. But at least we try. We start off with that premise that it's something to discuss together.
One of the interesting things that Kelly wrote in the notes that she sent to us before, which sort of leads to the policies and leads to what happens when something happens and how we deal with the thing, is Kelly wrote about our expertise, right? And again, we've been doing this, the people on this Zoom, we've been doing this for a while. So we do have a level of expertise. But like you wrote, we're not experts in their kid, especially in new kids, day 3, right? Definitely not, right? But we are experts in our camp and in camping and day camping and this setting that we're putting kids in and such like that. And I think that we should have the confidence to talk to parents like that. And sometimes, I think most of the time, the parents sort of acquiesce and they sort of, okay. Like, I think if you're too wishy-washy about that, then they will take advantage of it and jump in on it because they're the expert kind of thing. But you have to hold yourself with some confidence in these kind of situations because we've earned it.
Yeah. And we can't be everything for everyone. Too, right?
Well, and Andy, you heard or your wife came to my high warmth, high control session, but I think that's part of that is we need to be warm. We need to have empathy. We need to do the work to build relationships and give information. And we need to have boundaries. Parents want us to have boundaries. They want us to be experts, but sometimes we have to earn it. We have to use the right language that says, yes, I know that sometimes 5-year-olds hit. There are 12 kids in the group. No one else has hit anyone except your child. It has happened 4 times today. It has gotten worse each time. The kids are getting upset. I'm getting 3 calls from I think data is really important. I think numbers is important. I remember one of my favorite kids who's ever attended our camp. I'm talking to his dad. This was years ago. And he's kind of just like, do I have to come pick him up? Is it that big of a deal? And I'm like, I'm sitting with him in the middle of a field. I've been here for 20 minutes. We have 1,500 kids this summer. He's the most challenging one. And like, I wouldn't usually say, that's not so helpful. I knew that dad and the kid super well at that point. But I'm just like, yes, please come pick him up. Also, we like him. Also, please bring him tomorrow. We will have a very specific plan. It's not a rejection. It's not a giving up. I mean, in some cases it is, but I think it's on us to show that we understand it differently than they do, because we're around hundreds of kids at a time. We're around 72 fourth graders. So we can tell that this is normal age-wise. There's a bunch of funky stuff. Armpit farting is going to be normal. Talking about something weird is going to be normal, but other things are not normal or not appropriate or are kind of out there. And we know that because we've been around so many groups of kids.
No doubt. And Jamie, you've had a lot of sticky situations also in regard to, Jamie has a very diverse camp. They bring in a lot of scholarship kids from the inner city and all, and it presents a lot of situations, right, that are inevitable in some ways, right, but have to be dealt with because of appropriateness and such.
And I think my strategy has always been, especially if there are difficult community conversations that we're having, I let our community know that we're having them. I think that's, again, some people might find that risky or that it opens it up to people complaining or other kinds of things, but that kind of transparency to say, hey, we just had this conversation with this group of children or with our whole community, and I want all of our parents to know about it, whether or not you're attending this week or not, because this is a little bit to your point, Kelly, this is who we are. This is what's important to us. If you don't agree with it, we can make different decisions, and that's fine. But this is the privilege of running camps like ours, is that we can sort of define who we are and what we're about, and we don't have to be like the camp down the road. There is a camp for every family, but I think it's keeping transparency and making sure that I think that's where this difference between the idea of customer service and this kind of communication comes in, because I think the customer service sort of has that rap of, we're going to do whatever it takes. Customer's always right. We're going to make it happen. We're going to be okay. But it is okay to say no or create boundaries, I think, with families, if that's but you just have to have that transparency to let them know that they're doing that, or else they're going to be surprised or someone's going to hear it around from a different way.
With park districts or community type programs, we can't set too many boundaries, but we can stay firm on our policies. So when things do come up, then we can handle them appropriately and consistently.
Yeah.
One thing.
That's going to make consistency is going to make parents feel better no matter what. I think. Yeah.
Anytime I send an email to everybody that's in camp that day because of something that happened or whatever, I only get positive feedback from it. Like in ththose kind of situations, you're not over communicating at all, Jamie. Don't ever feel self-conscious about that, because parents, they're appreciative of it.
And that's the feedback I've gotten. I even send emails about okay, it is thunder. Right now we have a tornado warning, but hey, everybody's okay. I do just because you can put yourself in that position of a parent being like, what is going on there? What kinds of conversations are happening? What is my kid going to come home with, whether or not it's a day camp or overnight camp program? I think those are important pieces to be communicated.
It's empathy. We're all parents. What would you be thinking if you were sitting home 15 miles away and you're seeing all this horrible black clouds and thunder and lightning? What would you be thinking? You need to allay their fears. You need to give them something to let them know. But you know what? It rained for about 15 minutes really hard. We hunkered down. All was well. And now we went back to our regular programming and we're good. And then you could literally hear all these hundreds of people just going, over that. Right.
They fill in the gaps with worry and questions and last threats when they don't do things. So
it's like you said, we're being proactive.
Yeah. I mean,
they're going to create narratives that are negative, right? That is just going to be where they're going.
Oh, yeah. No, look, I don't think it's a gender stereotype or whatever, but my wife's superhero is that she is worst case scenario woman. So she is always filling in the blanks with what could possibly be bad. But that's a lot. A lot of people are like that. They just are. That's a normal thing. And if you're a mom and these are your little cubs and you sent them off, like that's, you're trying to protect them. It's your normal human instinct to do that. One thing I want to mention that I've always done a new parent orientation. I used to always do it in person. And then when pandemic hit, I started doing it on Zoom. And it's a million times better because then everybody can see and you can record it and all that. But I do like about a 2-hour long new parent orientation with a woman helping me, a longtime camp person who is responding to the questions in the chat as they come, or she's feeding me the questions if she wants me to respond to them, if she can't. And like they can't talk during it because there's 200, 300 people or whatever on it, but it's really great. And the feedback I get from that is always wonderful. How they were so nervous and just hearing me touch on all these things, like everything you wanted to know and didn't even know you wanted to know about camp, because we've been doing this for a long time. We know what the pain points are, right? Yeah, I highly recommend that. And I know some other camps that have been doing that with the actual unit leaders of their kids, which to me is a little more risky. But if you have really experienced people, God bless, that you can pull that off. But yeah, to me, that's like low hanging fruit kind of thing to do, and have it up there as a thing, like as in my links page for them to at any time reference it if they really want to, if they missed it.
Yeah,
I think I would also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was going to kind of make a different point. So, I sure. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that has been on my mind a lot, which is related to what we've been talking about, is I have this desire to. I think back in the day, it was interesting. We had a little bit of a director. I couldn't even call it a disagreement, but a little bit of a debate on our director meeting that we had just a couple days ago on Wednesday night. Because some people were like, "But camp is the coolest when it's like a little bit of a mystery and this and that." And like they're thinking about long ago and like we're going exploring and we're doing this. And I'm always the weird person who I did not grow up in camp. I was never a camp counselor. Everyone's like, "How do you own a camp?" And I'm like, "I'm married a camp." But I kind of came in backwards because I had my social skills program and my therapy clients, and I would come help them at camp. Then I would come help the other kids who were struggling with the same things. And then I would help all the staff. Anyways, now I'm the executive director and do HR and all sorts of horrible things. But the point being that I think my desire right now is to like tell parents everything. I want to like tell them 27 things a day just so they know like, this is how much we care. We are doing all of these things. We are obsessing over every single little thing. We care about your kids. You can trust us. Please like us. But what I've landed on is little things throughout the session. And one thing that is, I always have like when I send it off to like 300 families on the first day, I'm like, please be okay. But I started sending an end of the first day note. And so it basically says, first days are hard. This is the least fun day of the session. They have the most waiting. People are the newest they will be. People are wondering about, is my counselor nice? Will the snacks be good? Where is the bathroom? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Did I bring too heavy of a towel? Like you're figuring this stuff out. I'm just trying to normalize. First days are weird. We're so excited to see them tomorrow. Here's how tomorrow will be different. Swim tests are done. They sit with their group on the logs. They do that kind of thing. And then I send a copy of just a template of our community agreements, which is kind of like code of conduct, but the groups do it together. So it has like safety, kindness, asking for help, just so that parents know like this is what we're focusing on. And so that if their kids come and like, it was fine. And the parents are like, what? But it was a lot of money and in 2 weeks and that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, it's think of your first day in a new job. That like it is the first day in a new school. It's weird. It's not fun is not usually the top word. But what I also do is I invite them with trepidation. I say, if your child had a tricky day, contact me directly. Let me know because I'd rather them know that they can right then how to do that, how to easily do that, because we can help them. We can help them so easily, usually so quickly, instead of a lot of the really kind of kind, mindful parents are like, ooh, I'll wait. And sometimes they wait 5 days. And by then they're upset and it's become a big thing. And it could have been, oh gosh, like Jamie and Andy, like we're not going to sit next to each other because Jamie's super touchy-feely and Andy is not. Solved. I mean, most things aren't that simple, but like there are things that can just be remedied really easily. And so I think, number one, at least parents know, like you said earlier, Jamie, the perception is they know what to do. So sometimes they'll respond to that email in a week, or they can, hey, what about this? And sometimes they just have a quick question and I can answer that the next morning. And then they come to camp just happy. Oh, good. Go see these nice people instead of what the heck's going on there? What did we sign you up
Yeah.
for?
In my new parent orientation, I tell them your child is going to wake up on the day of the second day of camp, and they are going to be exhausted. Many of them are going to say, I don't want to go back because I'm so tired, because their kids are going from these little couch potatoes to being like in boot camp. Of course they're going to be exhausted that second day of camp. Of course they're going to feel that way. Just something I want to talk about. Kelly does, those were great points for that first day email. Those were wonderful. Our friends at Coleman Country, Ross Coleman's been on a couple times. He's got a very robust, to say the least, middle management team. And he tells them that on that first day of camp, you're staying until 7:30 at night and we're buying you dinner, and you're calling every new kid, right? And talking to their parent, or just leaving a message how it was, and basically relaying the same thing that Kelly did. If you have any questions or concerns, please just call me right back. Let me know, email me, whatever. Don't hold it in. That's some serious customer service.
I think, and making sure that you have those people that can do that. I think if there's a situation right now where you don't feel like you have enough, or the camp has enough bandwidth to be able to have this kind of conversation, I think it's a very worthy investment in either more middle management or a person or
Speaking of
something.
investments, so this is
Yeah.
something we're thinking about doing this year, which leads, it's very similar to what the things we're talking about is I visited a sleepaway camp in the fall, and they had an office person dedicated to each division of camp that was like the parent relations person. And because a lot of these middle management people that we have, our beloved middle management team, are young teachers who are just not great at talking on the phone to parents because they never do it. They're expert emailists, and they get so nervous talking on the phone to people. So to have a person that is the point person that can also, during the day when your people are out and about, they can be the people that just respond quickly to the email about the lost sock or whatever too, and such. I think it's an interesting commitment. If this is a big pain point and this is the thing your parents are getting stressed out about, why not have dedicated people to it? I think you wrote that in your slideshow, Jamie. Right? You like, if this is important, you have to put money towards it. Also,
you have to focus on it and have
right.
people
This might be
who have
more
the
important than a new
skill.
Gaga court. Right.
Right. And I think it's just such a key piece of the world that we're operating in right now, and that parents need this kind of attention and this kind of information, because I think even like I've heard people say, well, the kid's happy. And that might be true. But if the parent has a broken level of trust somewhere along the way, if something happened at camp and they didn't hear about it from the camp, or even if it goes as far as like they've lost all of my stuff, right? Lost and found, and nobody's looking, like little things like that. When those pain points happen for a parent, the fun part gets lost for the parent because that's such a stressful moment. And it's like, you might have happy kids, but if you still have anxious parents who don't get their needs met, they will not return to you. Right? Like I make those kinds of decisions for my kids all the time, even though they're mad at me. Right? Like I'm not like, this is such a disorganized mess. It's what I see from the outside. Why would I sign you up again for that? Which
Is communicating that to your office people or middle management, or I mean, I guess to everybody. Like you mentioned a lost sock, Andy, and I think like I always think of, we had this, and she's lovely, she's amazing. I think she runs a preschool now. She's great. But we had this nanny who, when I worked full time at the hospital, and I would say like, can you please unload the dishwashers? When I was working full time, can you please unload the dishwasher? And I don't know, one other thing. And she was the greatest nanny ever. She would do this Blues Clues hunt, and they'd be outside for 7 hours, and they would do this magical thing. And she was amazing. And then I would get home and the dishwasher wasn't unloaded. And I'm like, but just, but also I didn't know the stuff she was doing. The only reason I ended up ultimately knowing is because my husband works from home, so he can see it. But it symbolizes a lot. It's like, well, now I guess I can't tell you to do other things. Like, why didn't you do it? But didn't you care? But like, now I have to do, like, the lost sock, it means a lot, right? Are you organized? Is anyone helping them? Is anyone noticing that he's walking around with one sock? Does anybody care? Like, it's a lot. It symbolizes a lot.
All right, folks, we have to wrap it up. That was a wonderful hour of discussion, some really important points there, and something I think camp directors think about as you're sitting next to your Yuletide fireplace in a couple of weeks. Anyway, I want to thank our friends at Campminder at Camptivities and Commercial Recreation Specialists for helping bring this podcast to you. If you like what you hear, you should subscribe to the Day Camp Pod on your favorite podcast platform. Check out our show notes for this episode and all our episodes at daycamppodcast.com, as well as contact info for the show, for Kelly Jones and Jaime Pickles, and for myself and Sam Thompson. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Day Camp Pod.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by Go Camp Pro and the Go Camp Pro Podcast Network. Find a podcast for camp professionals of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Thanks for listening, friends. Hey, Camp Pros, we love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, we hope that whenever you share an idea that you learned from the Camp Hacker podcast, conference, summer camp professionals group, or wherever else, that you're quick to give credit where credit is due. That way, we can all encourage more camp pros to share the tips and tricks that will make camp better.